Hi, beer brewers and beer drinkers. I'm Dave, and today I'm going to brew for you a Saison Style beer. A Saison, if you don't know, is a Belgian style ale that got its origins from the French-speaking part of Belgium. It's a lighter in color, hence a pale ale, and it looks very similar to a wheat beer or a Hefeweizen. I'm going to do an all-grain brew today. It's my second one. Maybe some of you have seen my Dogfish Head clone series that I brewed about a year ago. I took some time off and didn't video a couple of my brews, but this one I felt that it might be interesting to do. So I'm going to walk you through this step by step from the beginning of my boil, which would be back after I am putting my grains in my mash tun here, all the way through to pitching the yeast. And hopefully at the end of it, when it conditions, I'll be able to do a follow-up on how it tasted and turned out. Now, this recipe I downloaded from someone off the internet. I don't have their name, so I'll give them credit at the next segment here when I look up who they are. But it's just a very simple grain recipe. It seems that it'll be pretty easy, less maintaining throughout the boil compared to the Dogfish Head one that I did a year ago. So I'm just getting things set up here. What I have in my brew area here is my kettle. I'm bringing this water right here, 4 gallons of it, to 170 degrees Fahrenheit. And what I will do then is put it into my mash tun, which is this large orange container back here. And in that container, I'll put all my grains. I'll let that sit for a period of, I think it is 70 minutes. And then at that time, I will sparge those grains. But I'll walk you through that as I get to that point. Now, there is one part about this recipe that I'm not quite sure how to handle. And when I show you the recipe here shortly, I'll explain to you what I'm going to do. Whether it's right or not, I don't know. So hopefully some of you folks who may have made one of these or have done this before can correct me or maybe clarify as to what maybe I should have done if I didn't do it right. So real quick, at my brewing station here, I have, again, my wort here where I'll be boiling later. This is just where I'm heating my water up. I have my grains in the background, and then behind me is my sanitation bucket where I put all my tools. It's very important to keep all your equipment clean. You don't want to introduce any sort of contaminants into any part of your brewing or your brewing process. So I have all my sections set up here, and hopefully this will turn out to be a good batch. It's getting cloudy right now. There's no chance of rain, but it's looking like it might. So hopefully the weather will hold off for this video. So I'll be back. Okay, everybody. So what I'm doing now is my water came to 170 degrees, and now I have my grains here that I'm going to begin steeping here in my mash tun. Now, one thing you need to be careful of as you add your grains is you don't want any air pockets to form in your grain bed, because that means you're not getting all of the grains incorporated in your mash tun here. Air pockets are not good. You don't want to have that, because you're not going to get a high degree of efficiency, I guess, with the grains you've added. So that's what I've done here. This is all of it. This is a little over 11 pounds, like I showed you on my recipe. You also got to be careful of clumping as well. I see a couple clumps here, which I'm going to try and get rid of. So you need to be careful with that. So what I'm going to do now is, after I get this set up, so you can see a clump there, is let this sit for how long? 1 hour, according to this recipe. So I'm going to put the lid on this, it should have brought the temperature down to about 150 degrees, and it should hopefully stay there for the course of an hour. And then I'll begin my sparging. So we'll pick this up when we get to that stage. Okay everyone, I'm going to share with you my recipe here, or my ingredients that I'm using in this batch, the Saison batch. So you'll see here the grains that I'm going to add, approximately 11 pounds or so. You can ignore the info at the end of each of the names here. That's just the way the web page printed out. But you'll see approximately 11 pounds in total. Let me scroll across here so you can see all the values, the pertinent information for those of you interested. This particular batch should come out to be about, I think, 7% ABV. The one question that I have here that I mentioned in a previous segment is this cane sugar at the bottom here. I'm not quite sure where to incorporate that. It seems, according to this, I should put this in with my mash, but I don't believe that is where it should go. The point of the mash is to break down the starches into fermentable sugars, which you'll see happening, well, you won't see, but will happen with these three right here. Being that this cane sugar is already sugar, I don't know if I should put that in with my mash. So what I'm going to do then is, right at the very beginning of my boil, I'm going to incorporate it in the very beginning. So I have a pound of that. So anybody who's done this before and can maybe correct or clarify this stage, please do. I don't know if it's going to make much of a difference, but it just might. Okay, so that's my grains. And then at the bottom here are my hops, also showing the times with which they are incorporated into my boil of my wort. I got some Saaz in there, some spalts, and the total ounces. At the very bottom is the yeast that I'm using. I'm not using Y yeast, I'm actually using White Labs. The place I get my ingredients from carries White Labs, but I've used White Labs before. It's in a test tube and needs to be kept cold up until I use it, so that's what I'm using. I'm also using Irish moss as well, 10 minutes at the very end of my boil, and I think I might have that somewhere back here. I think it's just an ounce of that. Yeah, right here. So 10 minutes left. I'm sorry, not an ounce, a teaspoon. And Irish moss is typically added to your boil to act as a clarifying agent. You can or cannot do that. I don't know if it's just an optional thing. At the bottom here you saw hop fill. That's where I got this recipe from. I want to give some credit to the person I got it from. It is Kyle Carson from Montana, so thank you, Kyle. I'm looking forward to this. I hope it turns out well. It sounds like you're a home brewer as well. So hopville.com, Kyle Carson from Montana. The name of the recipe is called Saison Nectar, if you want to look that up to maybe get more details beyond what I'm showing here. So anyway, what I'm doing right now is I am letting my grains sit for an hour. That's where the conversion is occurring, the sacrification rest, as they would call it. And I will check back in with you when we get to the next stage, which is when we start our sparging. So hang around. See you in a bit. Okay, we've now come up to the end of our sacrification rest. We let our grains steep in here in our mash tun for about an hour. Remember, we had heated up 170-degree water, put it in here, put our grains in there of 11 pounds, and we're letting this sit for an hour. Well, that has just ended, so what we need to do now is to do what's called sparging. Over on the side here, I have a kettle heating up 2.5 gallons of water to 170 degrees. And what I'm going to do is take that water and run that over the top of my mash tun here to collect the what would be called now our wort, or our hot liquor, into the container that we're going to boil our wort in. So let me get that set up and I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. Okay, so before we begin our sparging, what we need to do first is to take some of the hot liquor out of the bottom here and recirculate it back through. What happens during the saccharification rest, the grains, a lot of it get down here in the bottom, and I want to mention that this container has a false bottom. What that basically is a screen that I have put in here behind this valve to capture a lot of the husks and the remnants of the grains that I put in here. So what we need to do now is, what I'm going to do is, first I'm just going to take a sample and show you that how cloudy it gets in the very beginning. It has a really nice color to it, a very pale ale-ish color. I don't know if you can see this, but there are some grains, some husks floating around in there. We do not want that in our wort. So what we need to do now is recirculate this back through using a larger pitcher, of course, than this one glass to get to a point where that is a lot clearer. So I'm going to use this, do this several times until I start noticing this clearing up, and at that point in time I'm going to start sparging my hot liquor tank here with 2.5 gallons of 170-degree Fahrenheit water. So I'm going to do this for a little bit, and then we'll come back and I'll show you my setup that I'm going to use for my sparging. Okay, I had to make a slight modification to my setup because my hose here wasn't long enough, so I had to move everything over to this part of the deck. But basically what I'm doing now is what's called sparging. So in this container up here, I have my 2.5 gallons of 170-degree Fahrenheit water going through this little spraying apparatus I made out of some PVC pipe and some sprayers. And what that's doing is just trickling this hot water over the grain bed, as you can see here, without it getting fogged up. At the same time, I'm letting the what's now called wort into my bucket. And I'm running it through a screen just because I want to make sure I catch as many husks as I can coming out of here. Now, it looks a little bit on the lighter side, a little bit lighter than I would have expected, but maybe that's just because it's just some thin tubing here and it just looks like that. I expected it to be a little bit darker, but I know it's a pale ale, so it will be on the lighter side, but we'll see how things turn out. So I started with, in here, 4 gallons, and up here, 2.5. So that's going to give me a total of 6.5 gallons, which will be plenty for my boil. I want to fill this this pot up almost to the top ridge here, which should give me about 6 gallons. I want to net out overall about 5, giving some to evaporation during my boil, and I should be good. So I'm going to let this run. It's going to run for quite a while, and upon its conclusion I will have this filled up with my wort ready to begin my boil. And then at that point it's very similar to doing a malt extract brew. Here I did all grain. So this step right here obviously you would not do if you went the extract route. So this is just an additional step. I prefer it honestly for many reasons. The materials are cheaper. And I just think that you're kind of getting a fresher product in a sense that the grains are fresher. When you get dried malt extract, who knows how long the manufacturer had it sitting around in a warehouse or it's been transported or whatnot. So I think you're getting a little bit better overall quality here if you go this route. It's just a little bit extra work, but I think it's well worth it. Okay, so I'll check back when we're getting ready to boil the wort. Okay, now we're at the point where we're going to boil our wort. In this container is about 6 gallons, or maybe a little bit more than 6 gallons of my wort that I got from when I was sparging my grains in the previous step. I need to bring this up to a boil, up to 212 degrees Fahrenheit, and I need to boil that for 90 minutes. And during that 90 minutes, I'm going to add hops on specified intervals. And I have the hop schedule here, which I will show you in a moment. Now, from the beginning of the video, I mentioned there was cane sugar that I needed to add. a pound of it, which is right here. The directions or the recipe didn't really specify too clearly as to when to add it. So when I get this up to a boiling point and I start my timer, I'm going to add this cane sugar to my wort and let that boil through. So I hope that's going to be all right. I'm sure it'll still turn out fine, but if anybody feels otherwise, please post your comment on my video here. So I'm going to get back to you in a moment here once I get this boiling, and we'll see how this thing turns out through the next 90 minutes. So we'll see you in a bit. All right, I want to share with you what the boil looks like from this point out. We just transferred everything into the wort into that kettle over there, and we're bringing it up to a boiling temperature. Once we get to the boil, we got 90 minutes to go. So at the very beginning of the boil, you see here we're going to add 1 1/4 ounces of the Saaz hops that we have, and then there's a period of time where we do absolutely nothing, and then at 30 minutes left of the boil, we're going to add 1 ounce of the German Spalt hops. Then at 10 minutes, we're going to add a little bit more hops to it. That's where we're going to incorporate our Irish moss, a teaspoon of that, and then at a minute left, we're going to add a final half ounce of the Spalt hops, and then we're going to chill. So that's it, pretty straightforward. When this starts to boil, though, in addition to adding these hops, I'm going to add my 1 pound of cane sugar there to see how that turns out, because it wasn't clear as to where to bring it in. So anyway, there you have it. Pretty simple and straightforward. I will check in with you again when we get to the start of the boil. I just wanted to mention here that before I get that boiling, I took a sample of this. What I'm going to do now is just chill this. This is a very light pale ale, lighter than I would have expected. I just tasted it, and it's good. It's very sweet, and I think it's still going to turn out okay. But I just expected it to be a little bit darker than this. But from how typical saisons go, it's definitely light along with, I guess, where they typically are. So anyway, I'm going to let this chill or cool down to about room temperature, and then I'm going to take its gravity, and from that we can use that as one number to calculate the overall alcohol percentage. So just thought I'd share that with you if you're interested in checking out the starting and ending gravity of your brew. Alright, so we'll be back when we get that thing boiling. Okay, so we finally reached our boiling point here, which is when we're going to start our timer. So what we're going to do now is add our hops, and according to our hop schedule here, we're going to add a 1 1/4 ounce of the Saaz hops. So you pour that in there, it should come out to 1 1/4, maybe a little bit shy of that. You don't by any means have to really do this with a scale. You can kind of guesstimate it. I'm just doing this just because I'm doing this video. Anyway, 1 1/4 right there. So we're going to add this to our boil. One of the things you need to be careful of here is boilovers. Every time I've experienced this, when you put in hops, you sometimes will get a boilover. So have a spoon handy and get ready to adjust your temperature accordingly. You'll see how it's boiling over right there. So just draw up your temperature, and that usually calms it down. This will happen quite a bit. There's a point called the hot break point, and I can't remember exactly what that exactly is, but at that point in time you will get a nice boil. You won't have as much foam up top, but just keep an eye on it as you're doing this. You don't need to stir it too often, but just kind of keep it going, and you should be good for the next 90 minutes here. So we'll keep an eye on this, see how it goes, and I'll keep you posted. I'm also going to add my cane sugar at this point as well, because that's the part that I still need to add, which I'm not quite sure where to add it. So we're going to give it a go, see how it turns out. So we'll be back. Okay, everybody. We are at the 30-minute mark here. We've already boiled for an hour, So right now we're going to add another ounce of our German spalt hops, which is right here. Things are looking really good so far. Has good color, has a great smell to it. Again, look at that, it's starting to foam up right there. Got to watch out for that. You'll notice that I lost a little bit of water due to evaporation. So when it foams up like that, I don't need to worry so much about it boiling over. But again, you need to keep an eye on it as you see how the hops, once it was incorporated, how it creates a little bit of foam. So we're at 30 minutes left in the boil here. In about 20 minutes from now, I'm going to do another hop addition and add my Irish moss to this, and then from there it'll be the home stretch for the cooling of the wort here. Now, hops are added in typically 3 phases here. The first addition in the very beginning at 90 minutes, in the beginning, that is your bittering hops. So the longer the hops remains in your boil, the more bitter your beer is going to taste. So in the very beginning, I added some hops there. That was in the bittering phase. The next phase of the 3, as you would imagine, is in the middle of the boil, and that is your flavoring hops. So whatever hops you put in there, that's the one that you're probably going to taste the most. And in this case, that was the German spalt hops that we just added now. Towards the end of the boil, when there's 10 minutes left, we're going to add some more Saison hops, which is what we added in the very beginning. And that part of the boil is the aromatic portion of your hop schedule there. So just thought I'd let you know that in case you didn't know. So things are looking great here. It has a great smell to it. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be hopefully a good beer here. So talk to you in about a few minutes here when we get to the last hop addition here, or I should say the second to the last hop addition. Talk to you then. Alright, now, so we're at the final 10 minutes of the boil, and at this point I'm going to add 3/4 ounces of my Saison hops, which is right here. Put that in there. And I'm also going to add my Irish moss, which is a clarifying agent. A lot of people use this. Apparently it takes the, it clears the beer up and it brings proteins to the bottom of the boil, which is a natural way of giving clarity to your beer. So I suggest using it. This is a teaspoon amount, and it's typically added towards the end of the boil here at 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes. So here we go. Okay, so in 9 more minutes, we're going to add our last ½ ounce of spalt hops, and then we're going to rapidly cool this. So we're almost there, and it's looking really good. We've lost quite a bit of water though from evaporation, but that's good. We're going to be at about 5 gallons, maybe a little bit more than that, which will work out just great. So we'll be back in a few minutes. Alright, well, we're at the end of the boil here. The last minute, I'm supposed to add a ½ ounce of spalt hops, and I have that here. So I'm going to add that. Let this go for another minute, and then I'm going to chill this. Now, my last batch that I made, and the one but prior to that, the one that I recorded, the Dogfish Head clone, I used this little apparatus that I set up. Nothing special. Instead of using a garden hose, I have like an ice bath in that cooler, which has an aquarium pump, or a pond pump, and it just pumps cold water through my wort chiller here. And it's worked really well. So I'm going to try that again this time and see if it produces the same result. It really chills it really fast, and it doesn't waste a lot of water too. The water can be used to water plants afterwards, and if you're conscious like that, you know, and want to save water, you can do that. But it does require an extra step or two. And also, I got to give a recognition to Chuck Emke here from Oakhurst for letting me borrow his wort chiller here. Thank you, Chuck. I wouldn't be able to get past this part of the brew without you. So thanks. I'll be sure to share some of this with you next time I see you. So thanks, Chuck. So We're probably at that minute now since I've put that last set of hops in, so I'm going to get this stuff set up and then we're going to chill this and see how it turns out. So, back in a few. Alright everyone, we've reached the final stage of the brewing process. I've chilled my wort down to around 75 degrees, which is very important because if it's much higher than that, the yeast that gets put in here would get killed off by the high temperature. So it's very important you chill your wort to that temperature range. My wort chiller here, again, thanks Chuck for letting me borrow it, worked great. My ice bath worked really well too. I was able to get my temperature down to around 80 degrees in about 10 to 15 minutes. When I've done it in the past, it would be around 20 to 25 minutes. So this process saved me a fair amount of water, and I have a little bit left over. So it worked out really well. So what I'm going to do now is transfer my chilled wort into my carboy here. I'm going with a glass one this time because I'm just going to go straight from here to my keg. Typically Saisons are bottle conditioned, but I'm going to keg it, so I think I'll be okay from some of the research that I've done. So hopefully it'll still have the same characteristics once the fermentation is finished. So right now what I'm going to do is pour this into here, and hopefully I won't spill it and won't lose any of my delicious beer here. It looks great, by the way. It has a really nice color to it. It looks exactly like I had expected. A little bit darker than when I initially was sparging. I was afraid that it was going to be a little bit on the lighter side. So now that it's finished, it's looking really good, and hopefully it'll taste just as good, if not better, than I initially thought. So here we go. This funnel has a filter in it, and I'm just doing this just to filter out some of the sediment, some of the husks, if there were any, that were left behind. On occasion, you will get some blockage here, which I've got to find my spoon. Make sure that none of that gets in there. It's taken a little while. So what I'm going to do is continue to transfer this into my carboy here, and I will get back with you when I'm about to pitch my yeast. So we'll talk to you in a bit. Okay, so I transferred all my wort into my carboy here, and the next and final step is to pitch the yeast. Now, like I said, I had to get white labs, which is fine. It's a specific Saison Ale yeast. Can you read that? That's what I had to use. So I took it out 2 to 3 hours before I started my brew today. So it was allowed to come to room temperature. That's what it said on here anyway, and I've done that before. So basically you just kind of give it a good shake and you pour it in here. When I poured my wort in here, I tried to aerate it. When you aerate it, it allows it to activate or work better with the yeast once you pour it in. So I crack the lid here and I give it a good pour. In we go. Make sure you get all of it. And there you have it. Pick it up, give it a good swirl. And then you put your air lock on. I didn't put any water in here just yet, but I will in a few moments. But there you have it, an all-grain brew of a Saison. So hope this was a somewhat entertaining video for you, and we'll encourage you to maybe go out and try your maybe very first all-grain brew. I find it worth the extra effort. I think you learn a lot more about the brewing process, and put yourself in better, in more control of what you're doing in terms of your extractions and the entire process. So I hope this was fun for you to watch, and stay tuned because I'm going to post a few more. So thanks for joining. Hey everyone, if you've made it this far through the video, you've made it to the tasting portion. This is one of the more important parts because this is where you taste what you've created. And hopefully all the time spent brewing your beer is not wasted. So I'm going to test for you the beer that I made. Now, in full disclosure, this beer has already been consumed, so this is just for entertainment value, I guess. I went to a party about a week ago and took my keg, and it was emptied. So everybody there gave rave reviews and said that it was a really great, tasteful beer, and it was light enough to the point where they could have several glasses or pints throughout the night. So that's a good sign, and that's exactly what I was going for. Something that was light, refreshing, not too heavy on the alcohol, and enjoyable by a lot of different palates, so to speak. So what I have here is just a bottle that I poured my beer in. Typically with Saisons, you bottle condition them. In this case, I conditioned mine in a Cornelius keg. So I was interested to see if there's any difference with the flavoring. Now, I just want to give some information as to how I got to this point. I brewed the beer that you're watching on a Saturday afternoon, and after I pitched the yeast, I let it ferment in a carboy for approximately 2 weeks. After about a week, the fermentation process pretty much halted, and I just let it sit there. The only reason that happened was because I went out of town and I didn't have a chance to rack it to my keg. So it went about 2 weeks, which I guess was okay. It ended up being quite a good beer, so I think that was okay to do. So it remained in there for a period of 3 weeks after that. So it was conditioning in the keg in a cold refrigerator to kind of, I guess, let the flavors kind of blend together. And so probably from start to finish, from when I pitched the yeast to when it was actually consumed, it was about 5 weeks, with obviously the first week being where you have the active fermentation, where the yeast is converting all of the sugars into alcohol. So what I did is when I poured the beer into the keg, I took 6 or so bottles and I bottled them, and I have one here that I'm going to pour for you, and I have the remaining in my fridge, which I'm going to let sit for a period of time to see if the flavors change over time. Hopefully it will improve, just so I know how the beer will behave if and when I brew it again. And it looks like I will, because it got really good feedback, and I tried it too, so I enjoyed it. But I'm going to pour it here for you so you can see, you know, the color and all that. And I have a little thing behind the camera here of doing a taste testing, which I've never really done before, but I'm going to give you my input on it. So anyway, I'm going to pop this open, and there was a little bit of gas coming out, which is good. So I'm going to give it a good pour here and see what it looks like. Alright. Not very good carbonation, as you can see. Maybe a little bit. One of the things, according to reviewing beers, is head retention. You know, how long does the foam or the head stay on the beer? It did it a lot better when I had it kegged. This being in a bottle, it just doesn't have the kick to it, I guess. But hopefully the flavor will still be there. Anyway, one of the things you want to look at is the appearance. You know, how does it look? Is it cloudy? The glass kind of fogged up here a little bit. But it does have somewhat of a cloudy appearance through the fog there on the glass. It looks exactly how I would have expected it. It looks like a Saison, with the minus of the diminishing head there. But one of the first things you do is you look at it and you say, does it look like it should? Well, a Saison has this sort of a color, so there you go. So I would give it plus points for that. The second thing is you want to check the aroma. Does it smell good? I think it smells great. The person who posted the recipe claims that it had a citrusy sort of a smell. I don't really smell that, although I'm not very good at this. I think it smells like a Saison should. It smells like it would be a good tasting beer. The next thing you want to test is the flavor, which I'm going to do now. That's very drinkable. That's an excellent Saison right there. It even tastes better now than it did in the keg last week at the party. So that's a good sign. So maybe over time it's going to condition and be smoother and smoother. How that happens, I don't know, but it seems to happen. I would assume, though, if you were to get air in here or not cap it right, your beer would spoil. So this was capped well. So just make a note of that. The next thing, so the flavor. Does the flavor go with what you expect? Absolutely. It's not too overly hoppy. It has a good flavor to it. It's light. It's very refreshing. It's not heavy. It's not like a stout, obviously. So it's a very good summer drinking style beer, which we're approaching summer now. Mouthfeel. How does it feel in the palate? Is it heavy or light or smooth? Well, it's very smooth. I'm going to try again. Very smooth. It has a little bit of a bitterness to it, and that's obviously because of the hops that I've added in the beginning of the boil. And overall, and you obviously would give points to all of these sets of criteria, and then you give it an overall rating. From a scale of 1 to 5, I would give it a 4, 4.5. I would never give a 5 pretty much any beer, because I think there's really no perfect beer, because everything is always evolving, and you can always improve on what you're doing. But I think this is a fantastic beer. I highly recommend you go back and follow the recipe that I posted on the video and give it a try. It seemed really easy to do. I hope I made it seem like it was an easy afternoon style beer. Now, but before I go, I want to correct something that I said in the video that I noticed later was not entirely correct. The grains, when I put them in my mash on the video, I believe I stated that I was going to let them stay in there for 60 minutes. And that's not entirely true. According to the recipe, it should be 70 minutes. So 10 minutes longer, which is what I followed. 70 minutes is how long I left them in there before I began the sparging process. So that's one error that I found on there. For some reason, I really wasn't with it when I did the video. I apologize. I may have messed something else up. Like the cane sugar, for example. It seemed to I guess, boost up the alcohol content in this. Oh, one more thing. When I measured the starting in the original and final gravity of it, I came out at about 6.5% alcohol by volume, and according to the recipe, it should have been around 7.5. So, pretty close. And I'm actually glad it wasn't more than what my target was here. 6.5 was great because that enabled it to be more of a drinkable social beer, as opposed to your big hitters out there of 10, 11%, which would completely blitz everybody at the party who was drinking it. So again, if you're interested in brewing a Saison style, this is a great one. I can't take credit for it because I just downloaded it from a site, which I noted on there. So give it a go. I don't have anything else I'd like to add. It's a great beer. I enjoyed doing the video. I hope you enjoyed watching it, and I hope it encourages you to go out there and brew your own beer someday. So stay tuned. I'll be back again with another video. This video here has inspired me to kind of maybe do something else in the next few weeks or so. So if you see any of these little banner ads around here, click on them if they're appropriate. Hopefully that'll give me a little bit of pocket change to go buy my grains and my yeast and my hops, so I can go do another video for you all. So anyway, keep on brewing, happy drinking, happy brewing, and I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.